Cats are
Good to
great.
see you.
Something about them, but I have a gray cat that's just.
Okay, we're ready to start. Good evening and welcome to the Brookfield Zoning Commission regular meeting. Today is May 11th, 2023. Time is 7 p.m. and this meeting is being held in Town Hall Room number 133. We all could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This time I would ask for all of the commissioners to please introduce themselves, starting with my far left.
Kurt Timmerman, alternate.
Darrell Pratt, regular member.
Andrew Kame, Secretary.
Gary Getz, chairman.
Shandra Kumar, Vice Chairman.
Phoebe Holmes, regular member.
Gwen Arment, alternate.
Thank you. Next item up on the agenda is continued public hearings. There being none, we will move on to item number 3, public hearings. Item A Alpha, 100 Pocono Road, Z-23-14, Town of Brookfield, text amendment to extend the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16th, 2024. Public hearing is set for May 11th, 2023, which is this evening. With that notation, I will now read the rules governing the public hearing for the Brookfield Zoning Commission. This introduction is to the public hearing for May 11th, 2023. This is a regular meeting of the Brookfield Zoning Commission. At this point in our agenda, we have scheduled a public hearing concerning the application of Town of Brookfield, application number Z-23-14, for a text amendment extending the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16, 2024. And now, in the interest of consistency, I will ask once again that the members of the commission present here please introduce themselves, starting with my far left.
Kurt Timmerman, alternate.
Darrell Pratt, regular member.
Andrew Kame, Secretary.
Gary Getz, chairman.
Shandra Kumar, Vice Chairman.
Phoebe Holmes, regular member.
Gwen Arment, alternate.
Thank you all. We will open this public hearing by calling upon the commission secretary to please read the legal notice of this hearing.
It's the Town of Brookfield, Brookfield, Connecticut, to the News Times Legals from Amy Curran, Land Use Administrative Assistant, dated March 15th, 2023, for publication. Please print the following legal notice on April 27th, 2023, and May 8th, 2023. Please bill the Town of Brookfield Zoning Commission account. Thank you. Legal notice. The Zoning Commission of Brookfield, Connecticut will hold a public hearing in room 133 of the Brookfield Town Hall at 7 p.m. on May 11th, 2023, on the following: 100 Pocono Road, number Z-23-24, text amendment extending the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16th, 2024. At this hearing, interested persons may appear and be heard, and written communications will be received. Copies of the proposal are on file in the Brookfield Land Use Office, dated in Brookfield, Connecticut, this April 27th, 2023, and May 8th, 2023. Gary Getz, chairman.
Thank you. This application was formally received by the commission on March 8th, 2023. The public hearing is only one aspect of the approval process and is for the purposes of accepting factual information and data bearing on this application and to allow expression of opinion by interested parties. Subsequent to this hearing, the commission has 65 days in which to render a decision on this proposal. The final decision may be in the form of, quote, approved as submitted, approved with stipulations, or denied. After reading into the record the correspondence received by the commission relative to this application, we will ask the applicant to present the application in detail. The presentation will be limited to 45 minutes. The chair will then entertain questions of clarification concerning the applicant's presentation. We will hear from those who wish to speak in favor of the application, followed by those who are opposed. Comments must be limited to 5 minutes. Members of the public will have one opportunity to speak during this segment of the hearing and may also submit their concerns in writing during the public hearing. During this segment, the commissioners may ask additional questions. The bylaws of the commission allow only for the presentation of similar positions in succession and preclude the intermixture of comments pro or con. All questions and comments must be directed through the chair. As you are recognized, please state your name and address so that your comments may be legally recorded. Please be assured that everyone will be given the opportunity to speak. However, the commission is most interested in hearing factual information relative to the application, and in view of the time constraints placed upon us, we ask your indulgence in not reiterating comments previously presented. After the public comments are received, the applicant will have the opportunity to comment, and the time will then be limited to 10 minutes. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we shall move on to the next item, and that is, we will now ask the secretary to proceed with the reading of correspondence.
We received correspondence from Catherine Van Duzy, 198 Wiskaner Road, Brookfield, Connecticut, dated May 10th, 2023, to the Brookfield Zoning Commission. All the commissioners are named, regarding Z23-14 text amendment extending the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16th, 2024. I've been a Brookfield resident since 1987, and I'm writing in opposition to the proposed extension of the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16th, 2024. When this moratorium was originally placed on the sale of cannabis here in Brookfield, cannabis was illegal on all fronts. That was then, this is now. Cannabis has been legal in Connecticut for nearly 2 years, and I would imagine insufficient time to prepare for the lifting of this moratorium. To be clear, my objection to extending this moratorium is strictly financial. Each May, for 35 years, I have been casting a Brookfield ballot for our budget. Almost each year we hear about financial woes over the budget, cuts that affected our children's education, public programs, backsliding in infrastructure, building repairs, you name it. This year is no different. Brookfield has the chance to collect 3% on cannabis sales tax applied to each recreational product sale, which will amount to quite a hefty sum right from day one of operation. The money Brookfield will bank from these sales would allow the townspeople to never have to hear about cuts to personnel and services, never again, and long overdue projects can be paid for without sacrifice to our bank balance. Right now, City of Danbury is raking in millions from its dispensary sales to Brookfield residents. Why would Brookfield be interested in contributing to Danbury's solvency? No good reason, in my opinion. I am respectfully asking the Commission to end the moratorium effective when it expires this month and create regulations that match the state of Connecticut law. All the hard work has been done by the 28 states where recreational cannabis is legally being sold under strict regulations and who are enjoying the benefits of a well-vetted industry. We need the money. Thank you for your time and service.
I think this is the next.
This is what?
This is Commission's opinion. from the
Oh,
time
okay.
that it just-
Okay. We also have correspondence from the Planning Commission dated, Planning Commission regular meeting dated April 6th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. Under new business, 8-24 referrals text amendment extending the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16th, 2024, to be heard at public hearing by the Zoning Commission at the May 11th, 2023 regular meeting. The current 12-month moratorium is set to expire on May 17th, 2023, and the Zoning Commission is proposing to extend it for another year. The chairman polled the commissioners for their opinions on this extension. Esdale expressed dismay that the Zoning Commission has not appeared to have taken any steps to enact regulations during the past 12-month moratorium period. As a result, he is not in favor of extending this moratorium any further, but instead reminded the Planning Commission that initially it had been recommended only a 6-month moratorium in 2022. He would like to see the Zoning Commission formulate regulations to allow cannabis sales. Commissioner M. Loengart agreed with Esdale, noting that initially allowing a moratorium made sense to allow the Zoning Commission to establish regulations, but he did not favor extending it further. Commissioner J. Maher expressed concern over lifting the moratorium without any regulations in place. adding his concern over the access to cannabis in town when there are already challenges with underage smoking, drinking, and drug use. Esdale was in favor of having rules in place, not an all-out ban, but felt that time's up and would not support a further extension of the moratorium. The chairman also concurred. Alternate A. Stepniak suggested 6 months extension rather than a year. Vice Chair Esdale moved to decline the extension of the moratorium on cannabis sales, stating that the Planning Commission is not in favor of any further extension of the moratorium. L. Taylor seconded the motion, which carried 4-1-0 with J. Mara opposing.
Thank you. The chair is now prepared to hear the applicant's presentation. Now, since the applicant is the town, in this case, is there any further discussion about it, the application?
You can read the, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Yes,
the,
please.
oh. The application.
The application itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this section here?
Yep.
Thank you. With the wise counsel of our zoning enforcement officer, I shall now read the application again into the record so that we're all caught up on this. Town of Brookfield Zoning Commission application for text amendment and public hearing. Town of Brookfield Zoning Commission, address 100 Pocono Road, Brookfield, Connecticut. Regulations affected. A, the current section numbers 4.4.m. B, the proposed text for section numbers M cannabis establishments. The Brookfield Zoning Commission shall not accept or consider any application to permit the establishment of a cannabis establishment as defined below for retail distribution as defined in Connecticut Public Act number 21-1 and section 21A through 408 and section 21A through 408-1 to section 21A-408-70 of the Connecticut General Statutes for a period of 24 months commencing from the effective date of May 17th, 2022. All such uses shall be prohibited in all zoning districts within the town of Brookfield. The moratorium is to allow the zoning commission sufficient time to review the June 2021 Connecticut Public Act concerning responsible and equitable regulation of adult use cannabis, June Special Edition Public Act 21-1, Senate Bill number 1202, in order to consider the adoption of potential changes to the zoning regulations pursuant to section 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statutes and section 1.2 of the Brookfield zoning regulations. The expiration date of said moratorium will be May 16th, 2024, or the effective date of the associated newly adopted zoning regulations, whichever is sooner. C, rationale for the requested change is the town of Brookfield feels that additional time is still needed to hold public hearings and a referendum. Signature and representation. I apply herewith for a public hearing as it pertains to the zoning regulation of the town of Brookfield in accordance with Chapter 124, Section 8-3 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The applicant's signature is the town of Brookfield zoning land use director, and the applicant date is March 8th, 2023. Received for record at Brookfield, Connecticut on March 13th, 2023 at 2:12:05 p.m. by the town clerk. There's that amendment.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify a couple of things?
Please do, Mr. Timmerman.
There was the comments made by the Planning Commission. I think their disappointment is misplaced because we've been waiting from the Board of Selectmen about, holding a referendum and public hearings to provide input for us. So, and in fact, the rationale states that again. So we most assuredly would like to do regulations, but since the Board of Selectmen has asked us to wait for them, that's what we've been doing.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. Mr. Kane, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, I would. To Mr. Timmerman's point, a copy of the Town of Ridgefield's ordinance was sent to the Board of Selectmen, actually to our first selectman, to discuss with the town attorney as to how we would implement that in Brookfield. I know she is in favor of regulations, and I think all the members of this commission are in favor of some sort of regulation that would move this issue ahead. The Town of Ridgefield ordinance, in my opinion, is overly restrictive. It essentially bans all cannabis related activities in the Town of Ridgefield, with few exceptions, primarily medical being delivered into Brookfield, into Ridgefield, and personal use, which is already allowed by Connecticut. The question, I think, really is, as Mr. Timmerman pointed out, did they want to do it via an ordinance, which could be done by the selectmen? It could also be done by a referendum, or it could also be done by the zoning commission. Here, we could write regulations that would allow what we choose to allow, and that would be it. And we would do that through a simple public hearing here. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? If I may, then I would like to ask, though, at this point, we have those choices, but we were deferring to the Board of Selectmen, so should we continue, I think, that's our question. Do we continue to defer to the Board of Selectmen, or do we take matters into our own hands, or at least find out where they are, what their pleasure is at this point?
Well, my recommendation would be that we find out what their pleasure is. I am ready and willing to sit down and write regulations. I don't think that's a very onerous procedure. We have a pretty good blueprint here. We can certainly discuss later in the evening, later on tonight's agenda, amongst the commissioners, what their personal thoughts are on that, as to how we should proceed. Ms. Van Duzy makes a very good point in that there is a tremendous revenue potential here. I don't necessarily believe it's in retail, but certainly in the manufacturing area there is. So I think this is an opportunity to move ahead with this. So that's my comment. But it would require a little bit of time to do that. We would certainly, if we were going to write regulations here, we would certainly have to, propose the regulation, put it in our format, and then, announce a public hearing.
Thank
I'd like
you.
to make a comment.
Please, Ms. Holmes, Commissioner Holmes.
Thank you. I've been doing my research about this, and certainly it's a big issue, and I agree with Ms. Van Duzy about revenue, and I think there's a lot to be made. I took a field trip to the Botanist in Danbury. Has anyone on our commission checked it out?
I have.
You have?
Regularly.
What was that?
Since it opened.
Oh, okay.
think
What
he said
month?
regularly.
What month did you go?
I just was there like a week ago, but since it's open, I've been there, even at the road.
Oh, so you've been a couple times?
I have a card, I have a prescription.
Okay.
It's nice.
It's very nice in
When they
there.
did it used to be kind of ugly when they opened in Bethel, but they did a good job.
Yes, I disagree with Mr. Kame. I think we should have a retail establishment with medical and recreational. Mike's given us this graph, which is interesting. You would think that the recreational use, which is in the blue, would be way up, but it's not. Still, medical sales are still higher. I checked out the clientele. I spent some time in the parking lot. Most of these people were like 40s plus, like professionals using the Botanist. You can't see in the windows. It's very, I don't know, it's a tasteful shop. You go in, you have to give them your ID. They have the cannabis behind two vaults. They have a medical vault, it's all locked up, and a recreational vault. And they have like a menu on a little iPad tablet. And I think that's important because it talks about the THC content of what you're buying so that you know what you're buying. Because that's important too. I mean, to know, what it is. I don't even know all about it, but how high you're gonna get. Anyway, so I like the Botanist. I talked to the staff there for a little while too, and
they're making so much money. I think Brookfield getting a piece of that pie would be great, but it's gonna be a while. Even if we made regs this year, it'd be a while before we made dime one. This is an article that was published April 20th in the News Times, and it says, okay. Oh, let me add also about my field trip. They don't take credit cards. It's a completely cash business because it's not federal law yet. So you have to pay cash for the cannabis. And they have cash machines in there. So that was interesting. The revenue generated by the state tax will go entirely to the Cannabis Regulatory and Investment Account for the first 2 years to fund costs to state agencies incurred by the rollout. So I think it would be a while before we saw too much money. And then it says the funds will be dispersed between the general fund, the Social Equity Innovation Fund, and Prevention and Recovery Services Fund. Then here we go. The 3% municipal tax can be used by municipalities for streetscape developments, educational programs, mental health and addiction services, and services for individuals living in the community who are released from prison. So that's very specific, like
Yes.
these rules and regs about what we can even do with the revenue collected from this. So I think it behooves us to write some regs now and to get the ball rolling on this issue. It's definitely, I don't know, it's important to consider the risks as if any of you listened to the Brookfield Cares survey. Was anyone listening to the survey results, the town meeting a couple months ago? That was interesting too. I mean, this is serious, but you know, kids aren't, and underage teens and things shouldn't be buying this. They shouldn't be at this place. But just having it here, obviously, you know, it says a lot too. So I'm behind responsible usage, responsible regulations, doing what's best for Brookfield, getting this revenue, you know, getting the ball rolling on all of this. I think it's a good plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Holmes.
I just had a question.
If I may, though, I was just gonna put a point of order to the commission, though. Although it helps us to make a decision about how we wanna proceed, I think perhaps shouldn't we be just focusing on whether we wanna extend the moratorium, though, and then we have time to discuss the merits of what we wanna put in the regs, but that might be a little bit premature at this point, even though we all may have opinions about how we write the regs. I think the main charge as this public hearing is to, are we gonna continue the moratorium or deny it? Isn't that really what we should be considering right
Sure.
now?
Yeah,
Push the
Mr.
vote.
Chairman, the
Yes.
Board of Selectmen's had a year that's been after the election. So after the election, then the year, and they really haven't done anything. And now election season's coming up. Are they gonna have, they'll have even less time, I would think. I mean, do we wanna wait? Is there any plans afoot to actually do something, or are they just so busy with everything else?
Well, I can talk to that if it's,
Please,
Mr. Chairman, if
please,
it's
Mr.
okay with
Kane.
you. This was given to them, and my understanding is the attorneys have it and are looking at it.
Okay.
So they could come back with again, this is the Ridgefield ordinance. I am not happy with this, I don't think this serves our purpose. It does provide a framework here and talk about all the things that we would need to discuss. But, you know, we would need to make significant changes to this, and that's easily done. If we were to write a regulation ourselves. If they choose to do that, then they would have to have a town referendum and a vote on it and all that stuff. Or they could do it as Ridgefield, I think, did Ridgefield have a town vote on it? They may have. I don't know if it could be done by fiat from the selectmen. But they have been working on it. It's not, they haven't had a year. This was brought to their attention by me approximately, I would say 3 months ago.
Oh, but it's been a year since they came
Yes.
and wanted us to do this.
Correct,
Put the
correct,
moratorium in
yes,
place.
I agree with that part. I agree with that part. And, so, again, if, I don't know where we are, if we're making recommendations, or what are you asking for, Mr. Chairman?
I think we should be discussing the specifics of whether we are in favor of extending the moratorium. And if we follow the script and the rules that we have, we're getting a little bit off, but I think it is kind of unique because it's the town's application, if you will, so this is a little bit different. I think what we should be looking for is, do we have a consensus about extending it for that period of time? And do we have an expectation that the Board of Selectmen will act upon it? And maybe we want to talk about, if they don't act, what will we do? But we can't just sit for another year. I think there's an expectation from the citizens as well as everyone else that we will do something.
Well, if I may make one more comment, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see us extend the thing for a year, but I would like to see this wrapped up within 6 months. I would like to see the regulations written from the town of Brookfield Zoning Commission, or the town of Brookfield Zoning Commission working with the Selectman's office to craft a town ordinance that meets the needs of this commission and meets the needs of this town. I agree, not completely with everything that's been said, but I do believe there's a tremendous potential here, or there's potential should exist for folks who want to go, certainly the medical area, certainly the manufacturing area. There's a tremendous of products that are not, direct use cannabis product. I shouldn't say that, but non-inhalable products that are put out by folks that are manufactured at the wholesale level. And I would like to also discuss further Commissioner Holmes's recommendation there, because it seemed to me that there was quite a bit of caveats and restrictions on the retail distribution, but those restrictions may not, I don't believe, apply to commercial manufacturing or the medical.
But if I may, that would be more part of how we
Yes,
structure regulations.
yes, right.
if you
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead
I'm getting
with
ahead of
that.
myself.
Yeah,
But
but I
I'm-
hear you.
I
That's the
think
challenge, though.
The
But if I
feeling-
may, isn't it fair to say that we're not going to get the regulations done in 5 days? Because that's when this moratorium runs out.
5 weeks, maybe.
Right. So if I'm hearing everyone, even, wherever you fall on this spectrum of opinion, I think it's generally agreed that we need more time, though, since we only have 5 days and we don't have anything yet. Is that a fair summarization?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And if we finish them early, we have a, escape valve in the regs that say the moratorium's over as soon as we come up with regs.
Yeah.
That's nice. I mean, I think we're all of the school of
Commissioner
thought that we're
Holmes.
not banning this
Right.
completely, like one of these towns, Bethlehem, Woodbury, Wolcott, Southington.
May I ask a question?
Please,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have any idea of what the effect has been on other towns that are selling?
Good
I'm not
question.
aware that we have that data.
I can comment on just what I've read in the paper. I know there was a seizure. The Attorney General was involved in some sort of seizure at one of these stores in, I believe it was Stanford or Norwalk. I'm not sure which one. Nothing to do with cannabis, but other products other than cannabis were being sold at the store. And that apparently was a no-no. And so there's been some issues with respect to that. I do think that any regulations that we propose, we should look at the impact of those. Is there going to be require additional police action or additional zoning enforcement action? What are the costs to the town? It's not. I think a lot of times when proposals get put out there, everybody looks at the revenue, but what is the cost for that? Because, for example, in the town center district, everybody was telling us how we're going to take in all this tax. Well, that's true. However, the EMS and fire calls have gone through the roof primarily because of the tremendous development on Federal Road. People bring emergency calls. That's just a fact. So that, I think, can be all worked out in our discussions.
With impact studies being part of our.
Yeah,
and
and I don't think it's a very onerous thing to do, because as several commissioners have pointed out, we do have a lot of other towns that we can look at and how did they deal with things and what are their issues.
And if I may, not to cut you off, but to bring us back to the issue for this public hearing, if I may, I'm just going to read through the script and then we can entertain our next move if that's okay. So we basically discussed it. There was not a presentation, but we read the application. Does the audience at this time have any questions of clarification before we hear comments pro or con? I don't see any other members of the audience that have any questions. Chair is now prepared to recognize those who wish to speak in favor of this application. I see no one. Chair is now prepared to recognize those who wish to speak in opposition to this application. Likewise, I see no one. So at this time, the chair is prepared to entertain a motion to extend the moratorium, but perhaps then we could consider a proviso that says, first of all, that we expect, like, within 3 months, some sort of rough text from the Board of Selectmen if they're going to do it, or a response as to how they want to proceed, and also with the town's attorney advising us on the best way to do it, or at least what our options are, to get that into the record, that we're not just saying we're going to do it one way. If we do have 3 options, then that would be good to be spelled out, in my opinion. First, of course, we would have to close the public hearing, I would think.
Yes.
That was a mouthful, I know.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing since we do not have any members of the public speaking tonight.
All right, Mr. Kame has made a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
I think Mr. Komar made a second. Is there any discussion? See no discussion. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. This time, the chair would like to entertain another motion, if there is one pending, relative to our next steps.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we extend the moratorium for the period noted in the application to May 16th of 2024. That's my motion. I just, as a comment to that motion, is that I agree completely that we need to get back to the first selectman and within a period of 90 days have a decision as to how they plan to proceed, and if not, or sooner. I would expect that it could be done much sooner than that. And then at that point, either they provide the ordinance to go forward, or we provide the zoning regulations ourselves. And at that point in time, I would probably think the best way to do that would be through a subcommittee, but we can decide that going forward. That's just a comment. I'm just making a straight motion to.
So at this point, Mr. Kame has made a motion to close the public hearing on this item Z-23-14 for a text amendment extending the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16th, 2024. Is that correct, Mr. Kame?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second to that
Close.
motion?
Sir, a point of, you meant
Yes.
approve, not close? You said to close the public hearing, you meant to approve.
Oh, yes, yes, I did mistake. We already did that, didn't we? To approve the amendment extending the moratorium. So let me just, could you restate it, Mr. Kame? I don't want to
Sure.
appear to be.
I make a
repeating the
motion that we
Extend.
extend the Z-23-14 text amendment extending the moratorium on cannabis sales to May 16th of 2024.
Thank you. Mr. Kame has made the motion. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Wait.
Commissioner Holmes, did you second the motion?
No, I had a question. I thought this was all with the proviso with the 30-day thing. Isn't that the full motion you're making?
No, I was not going to
Okay, what
make
do you
that.
make?
I was just going to make a straight motion on this, but I
I'm not
believe.
sure that we can, right?
Because I don't want to,
Can you approve with stipulation?
can we?
Is there a recommendation?
So we probably can then, right? Because it says that we can. So,
I would be in favor of Mr. Kame's long-winded motion. I would, with the 30 days and that one.
Yeah.
If,
we're going to give him 90 days though, right?
what was it, 90?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Are you capable
90.
of doing that again, Mr. Kame? I'm sorry to put you through it.
I'm running out of wind. The motion that I would make would be that we would extend the cannabis moratorium sales to May 16th, 2024. And in addition to that, we will contact the first selectman and have a decision from them within 90 days as to how they plan to proceed. If they do not plan to proceed with it, then the zoning commission at that point in time will write regulations regarding cannabis sales in the town of Brookfield.
With a subcommittee.
Well, I believe we would have to do that with a subcommittee, but I don't want to tie the committee's hands
Okay.
to do that. So,
Okay. Does everyone understand the motion? Do we have a second to the motion?
second.
Mr. Komar has seconded Mr. Kame's motion. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing or seeing any. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed by nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kame, for that yeoman work. Thank you also, Mrs. Holmes, for your presentation. even though Mr. Kane was a little long-winded. Next up on the agenda is item number 4, review minutes of previous meetings. The minutes of the April 27th, 2023 meeting are up in question. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments about those minutes? I don't see any. Mr. Kame, I would perhaps bring your attention to the minutes because it's a reference to you, but it's not what I recall hearing. If you look under the section where it talks about the merging of the planning and zoning commissions, I believe it says that you were not in favor of it.
Could you just give me a
Do you
page
mind? I
reference?
can probably find it for you. Thank you. It's up to you, but here, review correspondence.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would make a recommendation that the minutes of the April 27th meeting to be changed to state that Mr. Kame added that he did favor this idea. I was not opposed to it. I am in favor of it. I think the question was the number of people on the commission, the merged commission. That was the only issue. It's not, there was no objection to merging the commissions at all. In fact, I was in favor. I was and am in favor of that.
Thank you, Mr. Kame. Is everyone
What
understanding what he's
page?
talking
No,
about?
Where are we?
no.
May I? Perhaps it's easier.
Page?
It's on page 5 at the top under 6, review correspondence. It states, Mr. Kane stated that dissolving the planning commission and combining it with the zoning commission was being considered. Mr. Kane added that he did not favor this idea and had drafted a letter to the first selectwoman, Tara Carr. He stated he would send the letter to the commissioners for review. And the minutes don't reflect that, well, Mr. Kame said he was actually in favor of combining the two. That's what he's asking that be amended. Is that a fair representation?
Yes, the word "not" would be removed.
Okay. Does everyone understand now? Is there a motion at this time to accept the minutes as amended and suggested by Mr. Kame? Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, accept the minutes as amended.
Mr. Kane, thank you. Mr. Pratt? Mr. Pratt's made a motion to accept the minutes as amended from the April 27th, 2003
Second.
meeting. We have a second from Commissioner Holmes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? The item carries, the motion carries. Item number 5, enforcement. Next up, Mr. Lally with the zoning enforcement officer's report.
Sure. 47 High Ridge Road, the Salis residence. I was out there yesterday. There's been no change in the property. I do have an on-site inspection. This is the second one with the town attorney. If everything goes through, we'll be out there next Friday, the 19th, around 12 o'clock to inspect the property, provided that the property owner does not cancel as he has in the past. So I will advise the commission after the 19th as to what the status is and what direction the town's gonna be going. 53 Merwin Brook Road, Little Stevie's Tree Work, Stephen Conway. I did an inspection yesterday. Everything's been cleaned up out there. There's been no violations, no complaints. So with that being said, I'm gonna remove that from the enforcement report because there is no current violation. 202 Candlewood Lake Road, the Danbury Slovak Gymnastic Club. Complaint was received. Attorney Marcus has since filed appeal with the ZBA, appealing my notice of violation on the club's actions on the day after the previous meeting on the, it was the 17th. So there's on the next ZBA meeting, that's gonna be an appeal, on my enforcement actions taken on the clubs. Violating the 89-9 special permit and parking on the lawn.
He's appealing it.
They're appealing it, yes.
Neil Marcus?
Yes.
That's her- oh.
9 Cross Road, DiGramio, residence. I inspected that. He was parking the dumpster. I had the dumpsters there in the garbage truck out there. I inspected it yesterday. The dumpsters have been removed. There's no sign of anything being done there, so there's no violation at this time. So I will remove that from the enforcement report also, since no violation exists. 44 Silver Mine Road, De Oliveira residence. He's got the roosters and the 30 chickens over there. Went up there yesterday. He's in the process of relocating, trying to find homes for the roosters. Wasn't aware that he needed 3 acres for 1 rooster. Obviously, he's got 2 roosters, so he needs more than that. So, but he's in the process of relocating everything out of there. He should have it done by the end of the month, is what I was told by his wife yesterday when I was out there. So, I'm going to continue to watch that. So, and I did reach out to the complainant, and I have not heard back from him. So, just going to follow up on that one. Next is on the cease and desist list at 31 Green Knoll Drive. Mr. McGovern was in on the 3rd of May, and he paid the $750 fine. I did reach out to Land Use Director Hadza. She was still working on the ordinances and stuff, but I believe with the town attorney, because those ordinances need to be changed around a little bit. And she was in contact with Attorney Schellenberg, so I don't have an update on that. I was hoping to have something by tonight, but I did not receive anything at this time, so I will continue to monitor that and advise the commission at the next meeting. So.
And again, if I may, Mr. Lawley, relative to the town attorney, the expectation or request was that if she could perhaps attend one of our next meetings. Is there an update on that?
There is. Attorney Schellenberg will be present for an executive session on May 25th, 2023 at 7 p.m. So.
Thank you.
I did have one question on that.
Yes.
My understanding in discussing it with Director Hadza is that the $150, and this is would benefit the entire commission to hear this as well, is the $150 a day fine was actually voted on in 2001 by the Board of Selectmen. So, and the problem being it never made it over into the electronic documentation of Brookfield. I believe it was also questioned again in 2010, and again, it didn't make it into the election. But the bottom line is while it has not been published on the records of Brookfield, it should certainly be updated in the zoning manual as well as in the records of Brookfield, since it was voted on in 2001. And that begs the question of, going forward with this property. I think if I don't believe any substantial compliance has been made. The original fine was paid, but they're still in non-compliance. So what would be the next step? Would a visitation and another notice of violation be appropriate here?
I believe it, and speaking with Rochelle this morning, was another cease and desist was going to be sent out to the property
Okay.
owner.
All right, so it's in the process is what you're saying?
Process.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, that's why I had asked about the visit that you've already updated us on, because I think that's the pertinent person to be directing some of our questions. I think it was Commissioner Holmes who had inquired if the attorney would come to one of our next meetings
Yes.
from this complexity, if you will, in this history, so.
And just to be for the record, that 150 applies to any zoning violations in the...
Not all, to my understanding. There are certain fines accompanied depending on the violation. So there's when I do my cease and desist, depending on if it's a violation for no certificate of zoning compliance or for earthworks or violating a special permit, there's different fines accompanied.
Okay, but so the amount varies, but they're all per day now?
I haven't seen anything to document that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
May I ask, how do we get that into the regs? If it's not in there?
I believe we would have to follow up with Director Hadza.
Yeah, or Attorney Schellenberg at the next meeting, the May
Okay.
25th meeting.
So we've
Commissioner
lost
Holmes.
revenue for over 20 years then?
22.
If you're going back to 2001, so that was just, Wow,
Wow.
wow, wow.
We'd have a lot of money from Mr. McGovern.
The-
Or
We
you
wouldn't
have
have
better
to open any
compliance
cannabis shops.
Maybe we wouldn't.
I mean, you know, the biggest discrepancy is, I mean, for being the chairman of the blight panel too, I mean, is the blight fines, they run continuously, regardless. It's $100 a day for every day of noncompliance, as is most towns. I know my experience in Danbury also was $100 a day for every day of noncompliance. Here, I did question it back in probably 2014 with Attorney Tom Beecher, and I was told that the ordinances need to be changed, and I do recall that conversation with him.
Oh, okay.
But regardless, I mean.
We're focusing on it
things
now.
If things were done and it was never
Right.
updated, that's,
So isn't it kind of like on the books already? Like, do we need to do, like, going back that far, or do we need to do anything to get it started up again now?
My understanding of the discussions with the attorneys are we can impose it because it's legal to impose it.
And it has been for 20 years?
And well, it has been since 2001, that's correct. However, my recommendation is that we get this changed on our documentation ASAP. And, you know, going forward from today, that is the new procedure, the new process.
yeah.
I think that's fair.
Thank you, Commissioners. Did you want to continue with your report at this time?
And most
Mr.
certainly
Lowell?
will.
Thank you.
Moving on to 89 Escanier Road. This one still continues. The hearing was completed, we're still waiting on the court's decision. There's been some back and forth between the defendant and the court, Ms. Goen, but that is still in process. Once I receive an update on what the judgment's gonna be, I'll definitely advise the commission, but there's no current update this time. I believe we had 120 days from the last hearing that I was there on April 20th, so that continues. And then 35 Hidden Brook Drive, the tourist residence, that again, that was deferred to the town attorney with the building department. So there's no current update on that one at this time, so. And that's
Thank you, Mr. Lawley.
it for now. Thank
Do
you.
any of the Commissioners have any other questions or comments for Mr. Lawley at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. Next item is number 6, review correspondence. We have none to review, so we'll go to number 7, old business. Likewise, we have nothing on the agenda at this time for that. Next item, number 8, new business. A as in Alpha, 23 Grays Bridge Road, Z-23-25, Nicholas Ushak of CCA Engineering, 40 Old New Milford Road, Brookfield, Connecticut, for 23-41 Grays Bridge Road, LLC, 2975 Westchester Avenue, Suite 110, Purchase, New York. Site plan modification, raised floor elevation, and revised grading and building footprint, along with other associated revisions. It's my understanding at this time, unless the zoning enforcement officer says otherwise, that this matter is still pending with the Inland Wetlands Commission for a decision from them.
That is, I don't believe it's been heard yet by Wetlands, but the applicant is present tonight to do his presentation to the commission. So the commission cannot render a decision until Wetlands has made a decision.
Okay. So I guess at this time, we won't be able to render a decision, but we can allow the applicant to present.
Yes, sir.
So at this time, if the applicant would like to please rise and come up to the podium, please state your name and address for the record and give your presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. For the record, my name is Nick Uschak, Y-U-S-C-H-A-K. I'm a registered landscape architect with CCA LLC, 40 Old New Milford Road in Brookfield. Representing the applicant tonight, 23-41 Grays Bridge Road LLC, for site plan modification D-23-25 for the property at 23 Grays Bridge Road. Just to recap, the existing site is 4.96 acres. It's in the I-1HO industrial zone. It's a vacant lot. There's clearing in process. There's a proposed 4-story self-storage building with 22 parking spaces. Just to clarify, the inland wetlands application, W-22-9 was approved back in May 23, 2022. The new application for modification to existing wetland permit, W-23-9, was filed on May 4th. It was actually heard for the first time this Monday on May 8th, and there will be a continuation to May 22nd, 2022. The applicant is here for primarily two issues. The first one is they have raised the floor elevation by close to 2 feet. It says 2 feet, but it's actually 1.82 feet, from 288.2 to 286.2. The second is to reconfigure the building's dimensions to a 10 by 10 grid. So first, discussing the elevation issue, the tenant, CubeSmart, it's a self-storage company. Both the tenant and the applicant's insurance company do not feel comfortable with the elevation as approved originally. They're looking long-term with global warming and increased rainfall and floods and so forth. They're looking down the road to 25 years from now. And they feel that raising the elevation will be necessary to ensure there won't be any future flooding. This could cause problems down the line for difficulties for future financing if there's any flooding history or anything, but so they strongly have recommended that the floor elevation be raised. The building still meets the height restrictions of 45 feet. We're actually under 45 feet this time. Originally we were at 45 feet. Now we're actually 3 inches lower. It doesn't seem like much, but we're still under. We have not changed the anything with respect to the stormwater infrastructure. Nothing has changed there. A little bit more about the building configuration. Self-storage buildings are typically done now on a 10 by 10 grid system. The building's dimensions therefore should be on multiples of 10. The way it was originally approved, we had a 75-foot wide building by 360 feet. So that deviates from the 10 by 10 module. This actually creates problems with the pre-engineered framing system. It's in 10 by 10 modules, 10-foot modules. So the building as originally approved would create many odd-sized storage units. You would end up having 10 by 7.5, 7.5 by 5s, etc. So the floor plan has been changed. There's a new architect, and it's now 80 by 350. The applicant with the new modification has not violated any setback requirements. I'm sure the commission may be concerned about the overall height of the building as it's perceived from Grays Bridge Road. I understand that that's been a concern. Just to walk through that, as approved, the floor elevation was 286.2. As proposed, we're going 1.82 feet higher to 288.2. The building height, as approved, was 45 feet. We're now 44.75 feet high. So we're actually going down 0.25 feet, which would translate to 3 inches. Of the most interest is the roof elevation as a result of this raising at 1.82 feet and coming down 3 inches. As approved, the roof elevation was 331.2 feet. as proposed, is 332.77 feet. This would translate to 1.57 feet, or 1.5 feet higher as viewed from Grays Bridge Road. So at a distance on Grays Bridge Road of maybe 65 feet to the base of the building and 70 feet up to the parapet, nobody's going to see, in our opinion, any difference if it's up 1.5 feet more from up there. I drive by there all the time, and you're in a car, and you really wouldn't notice a difference in elevation of 1.5 feet. So that's basically it in a nutshell. Any questions?
At this time, the chair is happy to entertain any questions from the commissioners of the applicant.
Yes, I have a question. So when you go by it, you just see the building? Is there any barrier in front of it?
Well, there, from the road, there is a slope. It'll be vegetated. There'll be plantings. And beyond that, like 65 feet down and up, you would have to kind of look across this 60 or 70 feet down there to see it. So it's lower than the road.
But I guess my question is, will there be anything obscuring it at all?
Yes, there will be landscaping.
Quite a bit?
Quite a bit. It's per the regulations for the front yard, for every 50 feet, however many shade trees. I don't know exactly right now. It might be one shade tree, 2 flowering trees, 6 shrubs for every
The normal?
50 feet, yes. And we comply with that.
I guess I'd just like to see in Brookfield, us starting to, as I see in some other towns, really putting a barrier so that you just don't see building after building after building. That would just be my recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Armet. Are there any other commissioners with questions? Commissioner Timmerman?
Yes, do you have any of those what do they call them, elevations that you had last time?
Yes.
Because they're not, I
Well,
don't think
well,
they
no,
were in the packet.
we have a floor plan. The elevations essentially don't change.
I mean, to Commissioner Armet's question, if she could see what you presented last time to get an idea what it's going to look like.
We do have a cross-section in the set. If I could direct the commissioner.
Because you had some nice elevations last time you came in front of us.
Yes, well, we don't have the building elevations that show the materials and everything. Those don't change. But we do have a cross-section. It's the last page, very last page. Everybody should have that in their set. I'm sorry.
Do you want to take over here?
It should be XS1. If not, I have a full-size set here, which I could open up.
Showing the vegetation, is that what you're saying?
No, it
No.
actually, it's a cross-section through the building and the road.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good idea. Show barriers of vegetation.
What page is that?
That's a good question.
Does everybody found this one? Yes. Commissioner Comar found that.
I think I found it.
Yes.
That's it.
Basically, I apologize, I don't have an easel tonight.
Okay.
But it shows on
No.
on my right, your left, it would show Great Bridge Road at elevation 300. And then there's a slope
Yep.
that goes downward,
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
and then it flattens out. foot of the
Slope.
building, then the building raises up. And then it's flat in the back, and then it slopes down to the wetlands. That first slope you're looking at, that will be vegetated with shade trees, which can attain the heights of 50 or 60 feet of maturity. They've got spreads at 30, some at 50. They'll all knit together, and you'll have flowering trees interspersed, and plenty of shrubs and seed mix. So the whole thing will be vegetated. It's very, the result is a fairly heavily vegetated front yard. We do our best to,
I guess my point, yeah, I'm sorry. My point is, what I would like to see, and going forward, especially a building that doesn't need high visibility, I guess, from the road, that there's a whole barrier, so you almost don't know that it's there, unless you know it's there and there's a drive-in and there's parking.
it's,
We have that in places in Florida, and you just know that store is there, but you don't see it from a scenic route, let's say.
well, I appreciate that. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna make an additional comment.
Please, Mr. Kane.
Yeah, I just wanted to state, I believe this is a site plan modification, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Right,
Yes.
so this has already been approved, and we already
Yes.
approved the
That is
previous thing. So what we're just being asked to approve, or to consider for approval in the future, pending the
modification.
wetlands, is a few minor changes up to the height of the building and the overall box dimensions of the building, and that I think is it, right? Those two components is really
Yes,
what
those-
we're changing in your, from your existing.
Those are the
Approved
main-
plan.
main ones.
Yes, and I understand that. I just thought I'd take this opportunity to make my thoughts
Okay.
known.
If it's,
Thank you.
it may not have to do with this application, but I have thoughts on that, because if you're in a car on Grays Bridge Road, you're sitting and your eye level is a little under 4 feet high. So you're looking out across, and you're blocked by all these trees, tree canopies. You're not going to be seeing that roof from there. You know, you're down low in a car, and if you put a solid fence, the result would be the same thing. And, you know, by zoning, you can't have fences any higher than, I forget, maybe 6 or 8 feet anyway. So it'd be inconceivable to put a 20-foot or a 30-foot high solid fence there. That would be awful to look at as well. It would be like looking at a building. So I think our landscaping is very effective from that viewpoint. It's a functional thing. Sight distances work the same way. Your eye level is a certain height behind the wheel, and we have to keep that clear so that you could see down the road. So landscaping does block views.
Mhm.
Thank you. If I may, I was just going to ask maybe one or two minor questions of clarification. So you're saying that what you're proposing now is actually going to be like, the building is going to be like 3 inches shorter?
Yes.
Than originally approved?
Yes, it is.
But the ceiling is going to, or the roof is going to be 1.5 feet higher?
Physically, it's 1.82 feet higher.
Okay.
But from Grays Bridge Road, the difference will be, in elevation, will be 1.5 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a bit confusing, you have to,
I'm just gonna follow up on that. You're raising the floor
the floor,
by one and change.
yes, and bringing the roof down slightly.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Thank you. I think at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to continue, since we still need to hear from the Inland Wetlands Commission.
I'll make the motion. I make a motion to continue Z-23-25, pending wetlands.
Thank you, Commissioner Holmes. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Pratt's hand went up first. Mr. Pratt has seconded the motion from Mrs. Holmes that we continue this matter. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of continuing this matter, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed by nay. Are there any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Next item, number 10, commissioner comments and an informal discussion. Do any commissioners have any comments or informal discussion? Commissioner Arment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going back to the cannabis, I would just like to give a caveat, and I know this is not New York City, but New York City passed the legislation there without any regulations. And it's quite a disaster, and a lot of kids, they're catering to a lot of children. There are stores up everywhere, and I've had more than one person comment that all you smell is marijuana walking down the street. So I would just like Brookfield to be very careful and make the regulations very strong. So it's a bad situation there.
Thank you, Commissioner Arment. Any other commissioners with?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I
Commissioner
stand.
Komar.
Thank you. Just I stand 100% with Commissioner Amron.
Thank you. Any other comments or informal discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll move on to number 11. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Kame has made a motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
I had
Mr.
a
Pratt,
question.
second the motion. Any
Oh, no.
discussion?
Commissioner
Oh.
Seideker.
I had a question
Excuse me.
for informals, but it just came to me.
Got to keep up there, but please, go ahead. We're not
Sorry
in much
about
of a hurry.
that. Just real quick, so if the application, with Mr. Marcus, he's coming back, he's appealing it, does that mean it's gonna hit our commission again?
No, it's going to the zoning board of appeals.
Okay, so we won't see that crowd ever, like, it's done for
And-
us?
There's, I can't say yes to that. I don't know what they may come back as.
They might come back here with
I-
another
For whatever clause, I
pitch
don't
to,
know.
okay,
But never
Good to-
say never.
good to
Fran,
know.
Fran, aren't they going for your notice of violation or something?
Correct.
Nothing to do with the turn down of a denial of what we did?
They're appealing my notice of violation.
Yeah,
They're
totally
appe-
different
They're
thing.
appealing your violation,
Yeah,
don't you,
how-
don't you send a lot of those out for that property? Violation notices about the cars?
No, it's been a while since I took one out, actually.
Okay,
I received 2 complaints within 1 month of the property, and I sent 1 notice out. No fines accompanied with it. It's just a notice, it's just a warning.
okay.
So,
There was an article in the paper too, I don't know if everybody caught it,
I saw
Sunday.
it,
Yeah.
on Sunday, yeah,
saw it.
How do they appeal the
It's on
violation?
Facebook quite a bit.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, members. We do still have a motion on the floor to adjourn. It's been made by Mr. Kane, seconded by Mr. Pratt. Is there any discussion further on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.